Disclaimer
Disclaimer.
that this talks about very sensitive topics relating to suicide, and if you or someone that you love is going through something difficult, there's always a path out of it, and get help.
Yeah, and there is a national support hotline at 988.
1-800-SUICIDE.
And there's also, I'll just put a link in the description for the International Suicide Organization that has a bunch of different links if you're listening to us out of the United States. Hey, Jake.
Hey, Katie.
Welcome back to By His Cover.
Wow, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
Yes. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
Wow. I'm so glad the invitation was mutual.
Me too. Hey, wait, I don't think that we picked our next book after this. Oh, yeah, we did. Okay, sorry. Hey, Jake.
Hey, Katie. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
Thanks for being here on our show.
You're welcome. It's an honor, really. I'm an avid listener.
Are you?
I am. Yeah, I listen to every episode.
Is that also because you're in every episode?
No. I actually listen to every
I know,
episode.
I do too. I love listening to us laugh.
Yeah. Does that make us narcissistic?
I don't know.
No, it makes us awesome.
Human.
Or are we prancers?
Dancers.
Dancers.
Are we human or are we dancers?
Yeah.
That's how it goes, right?
Mm-hmm. Hey, so what book did we read?
A horse walks into a bar.
What's the cover look like?
It looks like a ticket, like a little old style flyer for, like you would see like a poster. It's yellow and all of the writing is in blue and it says a horse walks into a bar and there's like a stool and a microphone and the little spots where it would be like a spotlight outlined and it says one night only. Live, a novel. A horse walks into a bar.
Live, a novel. So there's something that I think you should realize about yourself. If you look at the last 3 books that you picked, you have vibrant pink, super orange, and bright yellow.
Okay, let me talk about that. Because that's not intentional.
You've been accused.
I've been... It burns. Okay, so I was really trying to pick ones that you might want to read as well.
By their cover?
Yes. Because I know you don't like nonfiction. And I was looking for ones that that were funny.
That's so sweet of you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It ends now.
So you were you were looking for comedy.
Yeah, I think I was kind of looking for comedy.
You were looking for fiction comedy.
I was looking for something you might want to read. And I know you don't like to read nonfiction, but I picked a nonfiction book that was funny and a fiction book that I thought was going to be funny. And...
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. And that other book that we're not going to do.
Okay, great. So, how do you want to tackle this book?
Okay, so what I realized that we forgot to do on the last one is you didn't guess what the book was about. Do you want to guess what this book that you read was about?
I guessed that it was about a badger or something. Right?
Here, guess what this book is about.
I read it. Okay.
Okay.
So,
serious.
First impression, serious. Okay,
so
I'm going to give you my first impression. This is very serious. This is Jake's serious voice. My first impression of this book was that it was going to be a comedy.
Was it?
A comedy?
Yeah. No, is that what you really thought was?
I really thought it was going to be a joke book.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't.
It was.
It was. But it wasn't.
The anticipation's building.
Right. Remember in one of our older episodes, you went like, oh my gosh, please just tell me what this book is about. We're just going around and around it.
Yes. So let me finish the joke from the last episode.
Okay.
So you said, I don't know the rest of the joke, to a horse walks into a bar.
Yeah, I really don't.
A horse walks into a bar. The bartender says, why the long face?
Wow, I should have known. That would have been my clue.
Yep. So it's a great...
It was a good book, I thought.
I loved this book.
Yeah.
I hated the first half of this book.
Me too.
Hated it. It was awful. I almost put it down. I almost gave up.
Mm-hmm.
Did you too?
I almost gave up, yeah. I was like, I can't give up because we're reading this book together and we're going to talk about it on a podcast.
We are siblings because that is exactly what drove me to the end of this book.
Yes.
So...
And then I really liked where it went. Take us into this book, Jake. What's
you want me to
this
do
book about?
it? Okay.
Yeah, do it.
Okay. So this book starts off as a third-person account to a one-man stand-up show. Mm-hmm. It transitions into a first-person account of a stand-up show, and eventually ends with that individual's self-reflection of their choices in life. So I'll break it into 3 sections.
Okay.
The first part, I'd say the first third of this book, you don't really know anything about the second or third characters.
Nope.
You really only know about Dovala, who is doing a stand-up show, really grungy, nasty jokes.
Yep. I really didn't appreciate those jokes at all.
Just don't give this book to children. Grungy, nasty books, right?
Yeah.
Or jokes. Mm-hmm. And that was when I almost put it down. I was like, okay, I don't want to listen to or read
Right.
this long book
With all these
nasty jokes. It was like, there's some good humor in there, but it was sort of like George Carlin sort of comedy, right? Which at the time was pretty grungy, right?
I'm not familiar, but I did not appreciate the humor. Period.
Period. All right. So that was the first third of the book. Then
Grungy.
It started to introduce another individual or another character, which you come to realize is actually telling the story.
Yeah.
Which is apparently a childhood friend of Dovala's. Mm-hmm. Who
Dovala is the guy on the stage.
Yeah. Dovala's the guy on the stage.
Telling the grungy jokes.
Yep, that's what I said. Yeah. So...
Go on.
Go on. You want to tell her or do you want me to tell it? So, this individual is telling the story. You realize that they were sort of forced or coerced into being there to view Dovala's show. They haven't seen Dovala since they were bar mitzvah age.
Yeah.
At a camp. And sort of 50% of the way through, Dovala starts a joke about how he was going to his first funeral. Mm-hmm. And in a very comedic, normal, sort of bury the lead comedy, which we do all the time on the show, we build anticipation, right? But this was a lot of anticipation, like a lot. You realize that the story he's telling is very personal to him, to Dovala, right? And it's really not comedy anymore.
No.
Now it's sort of like dark and feelings based. And you realize that Dovala has had cancer, is sick, not just physically.
Right. Yeah, you do realize that.
And the third character is introduced, which is a childhood friend of Dovala that the second character didn't meet, who is Pitts, which is she's vertically challenged, and has a speech impediment. So that was sort of the second third of the book. And then the third third of the book was really a deep dive into learning more about Dovala as the sort of his life story, really.
Yeah.
Up until a certain point. You learned a lot about his family, about how he was bullied, about his father's aggression, right? All this really dark stuff.
And some of his mother's aggression too, although unintentional.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll dissect these characters. But it was a really cool and unique progression from you're listening to this guy tell some fucked up jokes to...
That are just like useless fucked up jokes.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll tell one of them later.
Yeah, okay. Just open the book and read one out.
No, I have one.
Okay.
I saved it in my mental banks.
Okay, because they were horrible.
They were horrible. And then, yeah, so, a guy telling really crude jokes to saying, oh, maybe there's more to this book than just bad jokes. And then you're sort of at the end, you're really invested in these three characters that at the beginning of the book, you were not invested in at all.
You were and as you would be in the audience, right? Like, it was cool that if you were there in the show, you would probably be uninvested in the beginning of the show because the jokes were horrible. You're like, should I just go? This is not what I want to be doing on a Friday or Saturday night or whatever. And in the book, audience members are booing and leaving and doing what you are wanting to do as a reader. I thought that was a really cool parallel. Which
was super duper cool. Mm-hmm. The term that I'm forgetting, the symbolism, right? There's another word for it that I'm forgetting at the moment. Metaphor? I just realized that we've been tricked into doing book reports. So our English teachers from grade school who are definitely listening and definitely know exactly who we are.
Thank you. Thanks
for tricking us 20 years later into doing book reports on a weekly podcast. Anyway, back to the book. David Grossman is the author, and I think that this author is just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. The journey that they took you on emotionally.
Yeah.
Some books, like Slewfoot, they take you on a journey around discovery of a character, and really the only feelings that we got there was anger towards Puritans and vindication at the end for Abatha. This book was full of emotions, and at the end of the book, I really didn't know that I was invested in Dovala until like the last few pages.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow, how happened? How did that happen?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about what happened?
I just did a lot of talking, so we'll switch.
Okay, let's switch. So he is sent when he's like 13, right? And there's a lot. I'm going to preface this by saying I think that the author I think that the author is probably Jewish or very familiar with that. Like, there's a lot of terms in here that I didn't know, is what I'm trying to say, because I'm not Jewish, but I think a Jewish reader might pick up more in this book than I did.
Right.
As a non-Jewish reader.
And we'd have to look it up, but I don't know if David Grossman is an American Jew.
Right.
Or
Israeli Jew.
Israeli.
Right.
Yeah, because...
Or somewhere else, right?
Yeah. Because, the main character...
A non-American Jew.
Right, because the main the story takes place in... Israel.
Yes.
And they seem to know a lot about geography and current events and everything.
Right.
So either David did his homework or...
is familiar
with that area.
Right, which I am not. So there's a lot of stuff in here that I didn't know. But there was... So he's the main character, Dovala. He's one of the main characters, Dovala. He is 13 or so. He's sent to a camp to learn how to fight, right? Like he's learning how to defend Israel.
I think it's
Jerusalem.
More like an introduction or indoctrination into nationalism.
Yeah.
Right. Go to this camp. Guns are cool.
Right.
Defend your country because it's cool. Type of thing.
Yeah. And he gets bullied a lot there. And in the way of like everybody slaps him, and he's talking about jokes about this on stage, but the guy who's in the audience that he asked to come and judge him, to basically like tell him what you see.
You're talking about the judge.
Yeah, the judge. I can't remember what his name is. Yeah. So he was there, and his accounts mentally of what Dovala went through are a little different. They're not a little different, but they're differently conveyed than what's going on stage. So Dovala is talking about like everybody gave him a hit on the way by or something like that, and he plays it off to be really funny. And then the judge is like remembering this and Dovala is like in, zipped up inside of a bag or whatever, being tossed back and forth and like can't get out, and eventually they just throw him down or whatever, and he's crying, and it's like really, really traumatic. And I thought that was part of it, and I thought it was really good to like remind you that for everybody that's on stage telling a joke, that there might be more behind the joke.
I think it's
to
not
what really
just,
happened. It's not even just that. It's just trauma. Like it's
a bit of a serious note.
Yeah.
That everyone has a story.
Right.
And so this was a really cool portrayal.
Can I leave this in?
This is a really good portrayal of two perspectives on someone's story being developed.
Right. Yeah.
Where the judge didn't think much of it because they had their own life, right?
Mm-hmm. They forgot about it over time. Yeah.
They had their own life, right? Their own story was their focus,
right?
They weren't really looking at anyone else's. Dovala was looking at his own story as well, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really easy to overlook bullying, right? Domestic violence, those types of things that people typically have bystander syndrome to.
Right. Yeah, which he definitely did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely did. So then, that's going on, and then you realize that Dovala gets pulled out of this camp, and he overhears that he's an orphan, but nobody directly says which one of your parents died or if they both died. They're like, quick, you got to get him to Jerusalem to the funeral, and like he's in a car with this guy who's assigned to take him there, who is just like, okay, let me tell you jokes, and like just like joke, because Dovala doesn't know what happened, and it's just like this whole mindfuck of like what happened. Mm-hmm. And so he's taking you on this ride in the car, like on stage, of trying to figure out which one of his parents died, and then like boom, you find out like the quote unquote wrong parent died, and that he was like accounting which one of his parents he wanted it to be. And I really didn't know if we were going to find out that both of his parents died or not. Like I thought that was a possibility that the person riding the car that Dovala maybe didn't even consider, that there would be neither of them. Mm-hmm. But then he runs away on his hands.
Well, there's
from the father.
Yes.
Which was a very interesting coping mechanism to bring into this.
Well, yeah, because the backstory about being on his hands was that when you walk on your hands, nobody beats you.
Right.
They don't know where to hit.
Funny. Yeah.
Right. They hit you in the legs, so what? Right. They're gonna hit you in the dick. Okay, well that makes you a wimp, right?
Right.
So nobody hit him when he was upside down. So he developed that as a coping mechanism to trauma. Mm-hmm. Which was interesting to see.
It was super interesting. I really liked that bit of absurdity in there.
But that scene with his father at the end was super interesting. Mm-hmm. What was your favorite part about this book?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. I guess my favorite part of this book was the way that he wrote it. Like, just the change in setting and the growth that you go on, and like you basically become an audience member. At the beginning, you're like, wow, this is horrible comedy and I want to leave, and I'm just like all these other audience members that leave. But then you find that like the audience members who stick around, who are really invested in this story, they develop this kind of relationship with this guy in some ways, and I just liked the evolution of that, I guess. What was your favorite part?
I think my favorite part was the very last few sentences, mm-hmm. where the judge walks up and sort of recognized Dovala, says this is probably his last show, right? Mm-hmm. And he looks forward to hearing what the judge writes for his performance, and then says, well, can you just wait and be an audience member for just one last time? Mm-hmm. And then says basically goodbye, right? Which I think is that word again that I forget from grade school. I think it's alluding to his real health.
Oh, for sure. Like he's about to die.
Yeah, like he's about to die.
And honestly, I wasn't quite sure if the judge was supposed to write, like at the end, when you're nearing the end and you realize, like, okay, Dovila is about to die. I started feeling like, is Dovila going to write a review or the pieces of information that he saw
You mean the
for
judge?
Dovila? Yeah, sorry. That the judge was going to write that for Dovila? Or was he really asking him to write his obituary?
Oh, that is so cool. I didn't even think about that because what Dovila asked the judge to write was what you see about a man immediately before you get to know them. That's very interesting. What is his essence?
Right.
Wow.
So it made me curious. Like, I kind of wished that there was an epilogue with what the judge wrote.
Oh, I'm glad there wasn't.
You think so?
Yeah, I'm really glad that there wasn't because that mystery will live on with us forever, right? Which a lot of really great books have that mystery forever, and I'm constantly waiting for sequels that'll never happen.
Game of Thrones.
Oh, not that one.
I have to throw that in there.
What was your favorite joke in this book?
Ugh, I didn't like any of the jokes in this book. I don't think I liked any of the jokes in this book, or I didn't like them enough to write them down. I thought that there was one that was funny, but I don't remember what it was because they were totally drowned out by all the bad sex jokes and spread your legs and all the crap. And I really, really didn't like the jokes.
But the jokes were really important.
Yeah, because they portrayed the character.
And I think they're really important because Dovila used humor as a kid as a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And he never removed that.
Right.
Right. And his mom would listen or watch his joke sets, right?
Oh, let's talk about his mom a little more.
Okay, talk about his mom.
Go for it.
Okay. So, Dovila describes his mom as his father not being deserving of her. Right? His father was like a hustler, a nobody, abusive, and his mother was more quiet, gorgeous, came from money, right? Could really be anyone or do anything, but chose not to. And I think it came out sort of in the end that she was depressed.
She was a concentration camp survivor.
She was a concentration camp survivor. Yeah, definitely then with like some form of after depression. He says that she has postpartum depression, right?
I don't know if it was postpartum, but she was definitely severely depressed, and there was also the scars up her arms too, where she had I presumed, had tried to kill herself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting the way that he described it. It was like embroidered stitches or something.
Right.
Yeah. But he did say that she has postpartum depression because he had postpartum depression since she left him.
What?
After she died, he was depressed.
Is that postpartum?
No. So postpartum depression is after a woman gives birth. After birth, right?
Right.
He uses that to describe how he feels about her death.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Which was very important because his mom was his favorite parent.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, she was.
Right.
Even though it seemed when, you knew that, but then you find out, like, she would, I don't know, randomly, but unpredictably start yelling at him, too. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. And so it'd be, like, fun, and then, like, yell.
Yeah. What are you going to do with your life? You can't tell jokes. You're going to get beat up, right? And there could have been an underlying condition like bipolar or something.
Something,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting when he was in the car driving to the funeral or being driven to the funeral. He kept trying to remember his mother, but his father kept popping up.
Yeah.
Because I took away from that his mother, it was difficult for him to remember his mother because she didn't have a lot of interactions with him. That she was almost transparent, right?
Yeah.
Removed from being
like
an
aloof.
active parent, right? Aloof. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas his father was always engaged.
What was your favorite joke in the book?
Okay. Okay. This is my favorite joke in the book. And it's a grungy joke.
Oh,
right?
great. Okay, I'm preparing myself.
Because there were no jokes in there that weren't grungy.
That's true.
Although, there was one joke in there that was not super grungy. So I'll tell that one too.
Okay.
We'll start with that one.
Okay, start with that one.
warm-up joke, right?
Yeah.
This was Pitt's favorite joke, which was a snail arrives at the police station having just been mugged by a turtle. Mm-hmm. And the policeman asks the snail, what happened? And the snail says, I don't know, it happened all so fast. I
liked that one.
Yeah.
That might have been one of the only jokes in there I liked.
Right. So that was the warm-up joke, which Pitch really liked that.
Yeah.
My favorite joke in there was the one that the driver told. Mm-hmm. A man is stranded on an island with a dog and a dog and a goat.
Oh, God. Right? I know where you're going with
this. And he's just trying to survive, trying to eat and everything, and super lonely, and wants to get his rocks off. So eventually he says, okay, I gotta do what I gotta do. Goes to unbutton his pants and walk towards the goat, and the dog growls at him. Mm-hmm. And so he, buckles his pants back and walks away unsatisfied. And a few days later, he sees out in the ocean a boat is sinking, and this beautiful blonde woman is drowning. So he swims out and saves the blonde woman, brings her to shore. And after saving her life, the blonde woman looks up at him and says, have me, do whatever you want with me. And he says, I need you to hold this dog.
That one made me laugh, but it was like, oh, why? Why?
So that's the kind of thing you're getting into if you read this book.
True. Yeah, you need to be prepared.
Which is I think this book is not for everyone. Actually, you asked a good question at the very beginning of our episodes, like episode a couple of them ago.
125?
No, earlier than that.
Oh, okay.
Maybe 70.
Yeah.
You asked, would you recommend this book to somebody?
Stop looking at me like that.
I'm waiting for the response.
You want to know if I would recommend this book to somebody?
Yes.
Oh. Not everybody. Although I see the value in reading this book even if you dislike it, because it's really, really good to understand how coping mechanisms develop after child abuse, and a good reminder, like you said, that everybody has a story. And for comedians too, I just think that, not to judge comedians as a whole or anything, but we've all heard of comedians that are really sad inside and in a very sad way, and they need help, and comedy can be a really, really good coping mechanism. But I thought that this book was a good reminder that can be a problem. Like, I just felt like Dovila really never got to deal with his trauma. And I wish that he would have gotten the opportunity to deal with it, rather than basically on his deathbed being like, this is my last show. And it was clear that he was going to die soon. Now this is coming out, and he's held on to that for, we don't know what is he, 57 or something? Like, he's held on to that for 44 years of his life, and never really given himself the opportunity, or had the opportunity in his life presented to him to deal with that trauma and have a really happy life. And so those would be the reasons I think it would be important to read the book, even if you're not particularly drawn to the style of writing. What about you?
I would recommend this book to everyone where their frontal brain is not developed. What is the part of the brain that is empathy?
Empathy.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's in the frontal lobe, but yeah, sure. Let's go with it.
We'll go with it. I'm a registered doctorate of brain transplantations. So,
disclaimer, do not take this as medical advice. Get your medical advice from a doctor. Jake's not a real qualified doctor in any kind of form of medicine.
That's like the rudest thing you've ever said. As much training as I've had in the medical field. Wow. Offended. But no, I think this is a good book for, like, take Off to Kill a Mockingbird. Like, get rid of it. Get rid of those books, like the Hardy Boys, or the book about the kid that burns because of the greasers or whatever. So get rid of all those books. Put that book in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this could definitely be a reading material for students.
Yeah, definitely. Both because of the literary style.
Yeah.
Very unique literary style. Mm-hmm. And because of the undertones and messages that's important for those age groups to discuss. Mm-hmm. Because that's the age that those kids who don't have any empathy and think they know everything need to have a conversation about realizing that they probably don't know everything. Mm. Yeah.
And good conversations can be had about bullying and, just trauma. Generally what people are dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't hit the quiet kid, because maybe the quiet kid's already getting hit at home.
Yeah.
Right?
I think one of my favorite parts of this book was the coping mechanism, too, that the writer gave Dovila. This walking on his hands.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a interesting, absurd, funny, terrible thing to give to this guy.
So David, if you're listening, which I know that you are, you're probably one of our most avid listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, David Grossman. Let us know how you came up with that.
Yeah.
If this is something that you experienced in your own life, or you saw demonstrated by somebody else, or you just came up with it as your own uniqueness, because that's a really interesting display of coping mechanism. Mm-hmm.
There was one other thing in there that struck me, and I don't know if it struck you too or not. I promise I won't forget this one. But there was a section where the judge was talking about his relationship to Dovila over the summer, and I think it was before they went to this camp, because after they went to this camp, he never saw him again until he was on stage, until Dovila was on stage and he was in the audience. But he was talking about their relationship before then, and how he was always a really funny guy and just very talkative and always was just jumping around and walked on his hands once or twice or whatever. But what struck me most was that it felt like a somewhat romantic relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure if that was a translation thing.
Right.
Or if in general, American society for boys is very non-touch.
Right.
Right. Like in other countries like India, it's way more common for boys to hang on each other, to hug each other, right? Stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas in America, that you're gay if you do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know if that was a cultural difference or if there was some type of romance going on, because he talks about development of their relationship and attraction and stuff.
Right, yeah.
But it was always portrayed as platonic.
It was, yeah. So I wasn't sure, when I read that earlier on, I wasn't sure if it was going to go there later.
Right.
But it never did.
Right.
And I guess it could be a translation thing, too. Because this book was translated from Hebrew?
I have no idea. We'd have to look at it.
Let's find out. Oh, here we go. David Grossman was born in Jerusalem.
Wow.
The question's answered
Thanks
right there in the back of the book.
About yourself, David.
Oh, he also writes children's literature and nonfiction.
This is a children's literature.
Yeah. It says that his writing has been translated into more than 40 languages, but I don't see what it was originally. I think it's Israeli. The translator has translated contemporary Israeli fiction, nonfiction, and other creative works, including David Grossman's To the End of the Land and Falling Out of Time.
Okay.
So I'm going to say it was probably written in Israeli.
All right.
Okay.
You mean...
I don't think that's the same as Hebrew.
Okay. You knew where I was going with that. This is how you know that we're siblings. I had a look on my face, and she said, that's the look of Hebrew. Good job.
Man, I hope this isn't rude or anything in any way.
It's fine.
Anything else about this book?
No. Read it. This is probably one of the few books where I'm going to ask our audience to read it. I think it's a great book to have in your mind.
I thought you were going to use the word arsenal for a second.
No. Just in your mind.
Just you open the jacket and it's books. Instead of the weapons or the guns or whatever, it's just let me just pull out my arsenal and it's just lined with books.
Well, I think it's a really good book for creatives to read. Whether you're doing storytelling over podcast or playing D&D or writing stories or poetry or developing a character.
Yeah.
This is probably one of those pieces that should be studied from a character creation and storytelling perspective for creatives.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I really liked it. Next time, I wish that I knew the joke before I buy or rent the book. I'm glad I ended up getting it. I don't know that I would have picked it if I had remembered what the end of the punchline for A Horse Walks into a Bar was.
But
that was so funny.
This is the coolest thing about this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Is broadening your horizons and picking up books you normally wouldn't read, understanding different people's or learning about diarrhea and scissoring, right? Like throw it back to those who listened to the last episode.
Go back and listen to it.
We've had 2 really interesting episodes back to back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way different from Into the Planet and Slewfoot.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We'll have to pick a lighthearted one for the next one.
So I've got my next books queued up already.
Okay, what's the next one?
Well, it's not what we're doing on the next episode.
What are we doing on the next episode?
It's yours.
Shadow Darkness Ninja Killer.
Into the Shadows?
Into the Shadows.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's called Into the Shadows.
Into the Shadows.
It is, to its core, that fantasy book that you wanted to read as a kid because the cover was super cool, but you'll find out more about the cover in the next episode.
Of By Its Cover.
Yeah. Any outro things you want to say? All right, cool. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, we're back.
Hi.
We were just looking at our spreadsheet, and we got the name of the book wrong that Jake's reading.
Shadow Ninjas.
What was it? It's not Into the Shadows.
Into the Shadows. Into the depths. Into the darkness. Into the deepness planet. No, that was the first episode. It's called The Way of the Shadows.
The Way of 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 Shadows is our next book.
The Way of Shadows.
The Way of Shadows.
See you next time on
All right.
By Its Cover.
Yeah, we already did that part. Bye.
Bye.